Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us. We appreciate you taking the time to have a chat with us about biology for VCE. Before we start, just an acknowledgement of country. We would like to recognise the diverse traditional lands on which we are each located. We acknowledge the traditional owners of these lands, and we pay our respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, recognising the elders, past, present and emerging. So today we just wanted to take you on a guided tour of biology for VCE Units 1 to 4. We'll just run through a few of the key issues that we became aware of in putting this product together. Then Paul McCallum will take you through a bit of a look at the digital platform and how we have addressed some of those areas that you really need support on in teaching this subject. The top 5 features of biology for VCE: complete study design coverage with no unnecessary content. We think that's very important, of course. So if you focus on the book, you will be in a good place. Second is assessment preparation, support for both exams and SACs. Thirdly, support for practical work, including videos of every practical sample data, risk assessments, lab tech notes and answers. We recognise that some schools have better facilities than others, and so a lot of the pracs you're able to view videos and observe those where you may not have the facilities that other schools have and still get the message through. Spread-based approach, engaging visual design to deliver students in manageable chunks that doesn't overwhelm. And new Workbook Pro, featuring enhanced e-reader functionality, more interactive assessments and reporting and tracking functionality. So that's the new series of student books for Units 1 and 2, 3 and 4, and workbooks for Units 1 and 2, and 3 and 4. Now I'll hand over to Paul to take you through the digital platform.
Excellent. Thanks, John. Thank you again for your time this evening. So what today is about is to help you become as informed as possible about our new Oxford VCE Biology, Units 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and the student books and also the digital as well. So a lot of what I'll show you will make more sense when you actually have a book, but I'll also show you in the e-reader in the digital component as well, where everything sits, the contents of it all, and the progression of it as well. What you'll see when we open up a student book, whether it's a hard copy print version or in the e-reader, the good thing about that is what you see in the print book is exactly how you see it in the e-reader as well. They marry up beautifully. So that's a good thing. And that allows me today to show you as well exactly what is in the student book when you do get your gratis copy and how to reference that as well. So what you'll find in the first chapter of both Units 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 is the Biology Toolkit. It's a standalone reference chapter, and it's great because it actually includes an overview of what biology is and what the course is. It gives guidance for all of the science skills, including data analysis, that students will be teaching and applying throughout the teaching learning, and you'll be teaching and they'll be applying throughout the course as well. Relevant assessment tasks, it'll give them information about that, and study tips as well. So it's a nice little reference. It's a great way, I think, to start off your biology year, whether that's early learning, and it's a great reference tool to come back to us at any time as well. So what you'll see is the same structure of the spreads throughout the Units 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And at the start of each chapter, it gives you a bit of a synopsis about what you'll actually learn in this particular chapter. It'll give you key concepts, as it references here, that come from the study design, and reference that key knowledge that your students will need to learn. There's groundwork questions at the start of each of these chapters as well. And the groundwork questions are a bit of a, I suppose, a pre-test, because these questions ask about prerequisite knowledge that students should know from coming through either years 7 to 10 or year 11 as well. But if they don't know the answers to these questions, then there's ground school worksheets that they can access to pick up, brush up, and learn that knowledge that they'll need before stepping off into this new chapter as well. Any practicals that are referenced in this particular chapter as well will be noted here. And you'll notice that any of the practicals are not, I suppose, just squashed into the pages and break up that flow when students are reading through each of the chapters and the topics. They're referenced and then found at the back of the text, and that's for units 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 as well. And as John mentioned with those pracs as well, there's no tech pracs, there's lab pracs as well, and everything that you need, including risk assessments and lab tech notes, are all referenced in these as well. So when we go into each of the chapters, it's broken down into different topics, and that's to, I suppose, help with that linear teaching, that scaffolded approach as you're progressing through each of the chapters, and that knowledge and application of knowledge for each of your students as they move through as well. The key knowledge outlines here what students will be learning in each section as well. So again, relating back to what the study design is asking them to learn and to know. And then, as you can see with the spreads as well, it's not just a wall of text. They're broken down to make it more manageable and accessible for students, engaging for students as well, visually, as you can see here. You'll also see the glossary definitions are bolded in context and then referenced in the margins as well. So students, although the glossary is found at the back of the book, they can read and get that terminology straight away on the page in context to build up their understanding and their literacy skills at the same time. You'll see throughout that there's worked examples that will walk students through all calculations, problem solving as well. So this is a great, not only a reference for your students, but also a great teaching tool for teachers to access as well. As I mentioned before, everything that's in the student book is found at the e-reader, which you can project, talk through, you can share, which I'll show you as we move into the digital component. You'll see these little icons referenced also that have, again, links to a lot of the resources that are found inside the books, and these are found at the digital book for students and for teachers. Lots of case studies in the chapters and broken down into the topics as well. So as it references here, it shows ideas in real world context, which we don't always see, which you probably hear a lot in secondary schools, is when am I ever going to use this? And that's been taken on by our publishing team to make sure that it's real life, it's relevant, and it gives students application of that key skills and knowledge that they're learning when they're answering those checkpoint questions as we progress through it. There's lots of good study tips as you move through. So these are nice little things that you can share with your students, highlight with your students, and get them to make sure that they're looking at them to assist them as they're progressing through with their own study. There's different challenges in the text as well, and these provide great extension opportunities to differentiate for those students that do need a bit of extension and challenge. You'll find that there's critical thinking and application of ideas with the questioning that's found in here as well. And those check your learning, as I mentioned before, will relate back to those case studies that are found in each of the topics, those real life relevant contextual application of that key skills and key knowledge that they're learning. The questions in the check your learning are found at the end of each of these topics, and also there's a chapter review as well. And as it says, it gives opportunity for students to test their understanding and skills throughout the chapter. What you'll find with these check your learning is you can do them in print version. You've got worksheets that you can print off and get students to answer those. You've got the questions that are graded as well, so go from easier to with just sort of recall of the knowledge that's found inside the chapter to more difficult questions as you get through those check your learning questions where it's more application style. These check your learning also have a digital option for the check your learning quiz as well. So these will then feed back into the teacher dashboard. So they're great used for that summative assessment to see where students are at with their understanding, but it's also great formative assessment as well for you and for your students so that you can see where they're at the end of the topics, at the end of the chapters, and using the digital component with the student and teacher dashboards, they talk to each other straight away. You're getting instant feedback, and we'll show you that as we move through as well, so that you can get students on track straight away if they're not where they need to be. So at the end of each chapter, we've also got a nice chapter summary and a review here. So it's something that we can go over and have a look. it's a nice little area for students to have a look and check their own learning here as well. Do they actually know everything that's in the summary? They can always go back and check that. And as I've mentioned, using the assessment as they're progressing through, you can really make sure that you and your students are on top of everything that they need to know, prior to even getting here. But when they're getting here, they've got options to go back and to brush up and make sure that they know what they need to know. The revision questions, as I talked about, for that practice at the end of each chapter as well. So you'll see multiple choice questions, short answer questions found in here as well. At the end of each chapter, you'll also find in Units 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 these new spreads, and they've been developed by a publishing team, developed from teacher feedback, to highlight and focus on exam essentials, as it says, exam questions. I know in Units 1 and 2, Year 11, they don't do exams, but it doesn't hurt to practice and have a good understanding of what they'll need to do when they're moving up into Year 12 and doing those exams. It's especially important for those students that are doing Units 3 and 4. In here, they've got annotated examples of good and bad responses to exam questions, and also where to actually utilize your time to make sure that you're making the most of the marks that you can get for each question as well. So these annotated examples are a great little spotlight for students and for teachers to highlight what's a good answer, what's a not so good answer, to make sure that students are aware of what they need to do when they're writing their own exam questions, answers to questions as well. On the right-hand side of the page here, this Think Like an Examiner is another new concept where it's asking students to actually look at an exam response. It's a good discussion point with your class, with the individual students if you need as well. And ask them to use a marking guide to have a look at this particular response and then assign marks to it, and then rewrite this particular answer as well, using that marking guide to make it better. So using both the exam essentials and this Thinking Like an Examiner should give your students a good idea of when they come to exams that they're not, going to be overwhelmed, and they'll be able to respond well, but also making sure they're making the most and getting ample marks for their responses as well, and getting overall good marks in the end. So that's a student workbook. But not only do we have student books, but we also have student workbooks for the VCE biology, and that's for Units 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So a quick little thing here, we've got the biology toolkit that's found in here as well, chapter checklists. So it's not full summary, a full chapter, but it is a summary of the chapters as well. There's more groundwork questions in here to test students' understanding and key knowledge before going through the activities that are found in the student workbook. Great chapter activities in here that practice those key skills. So you'll see data analysis, case study analysis, experiment design, focus on ethics as well. Practice exam style questions. So you'll find there's exam style questions in Units 1 and 2 for Units 1, Units 2, and Units 1 and 2. In Units 3 and 4, you'll have exam questions for Units 3, Units 4, and 3 and 4. And then you've got even more examples of exam questions inside these student book workbooks as well. So if you're coupling them together, you've got plenty of opportunity for your students to practice those exam style questions as well. Any internal assessments they can practice, so those SACs, and it's got all the answers in here as well. So you see here the way that they're structured, you'll see the chapter openers are just a nice key summary of the key knowledge. You've got the chapter checklist. So here, as I sort of mentioned before, this is where students can come and actually tick off what they know, what they're happy they know, what they might need to work on. Some more groundwork questions to test their understanding of key knowledge. And then if they're not answering those questions, an opportunity to go back and brush up on what they do need to know. We've got the case crackers here. So this is another chance for students to practice their application of that knowledge and skills in relation to the case studies for that key knowledge. Data drills, so practice that interpretation and analysis of data, which is very important. You've got the Experiment Explorer up here as well. So that, again, more practical and evaluation of what's happening in these experiments, and that's a scientific method as well. So it's not just doing, it's the asking of the where, what, and why, and the evaluating ethics as well. So again, students having a look and able to evaluate an ethical approaches in relation to the science in VCE biology. All the pracs have in the book write-in worksheets, which again, it's mandatory anyway, but it's found in here for students and for teachers to access and utilise for those pracs they're progressing through. And those exam style questions that I mentioned before. So even more exam questions for the students to access. So these are the different to what's found in the student workbook. So yeah, ample opportunity to practice those. All right, so that's a PowerPoint. I'll go now and start sharing the Oxford Digital. So what I'm going to show you now is the digital component, the OBook Plus. So this has all been updated to align with what's found in the student books and to assist with your teaching, your students' learning as well. So when you land here, as you can see, it welcomes you to Units 3 and 4. 1 and 2 looks exactly the same as this, it's just the content that changes. So the overall structure you'll see is pretty much the same in these new OBooks. We've got on the left here the book itself. We can click that open, and I will in a second to read it. You've got an option to download the whole book as a PDF as well, and that is because we know technology is great, but it doesn't sometimes let you down. And if your students need to access this and there's no internet, then they've got that PDF that they can download at the start of the year, have available to them, be able to access when and where they need it as well. You can assign lots of work in here. Any notifications are referenced down the bottom for you when you log in to highlight that you've got some assigned work or there's something that's come in from your students as well. Up the top here, we'll come back to these. We've got the Home tab, which brings us back to this page, the resources, assigned work, and reports. And we'll look more closely at these after we come out of the actual ebook reader. So let's go and have a look. Okay, so as I mentioned before, as everything that's in the student book, we'll find it's exactly the same layout found at the e-reader as well. So I know from teaching to talking to teachers in some schools and some resources, the digital and the print books don't always marry up. And this is, again, the feedback that our publishing team has worked on to make sure that what you open up in the student book is found in the e-reader as well. So it's just another way, ease of access and fluency of use. So our contents all referenced on the left-hand page with the drop-downs for each of the topics that are found inside of those. What I mentioned before is this other reference tool. So a lot of what I spoke about in that PowerPoint, you can come back to. So if you need to share this with the colleagues, different faculty members, you don't have to just come and, oh, geez, what do they talk about there? Because I'm inundating you with information today. You can open up to these pages at the front of the gratis copy we give you, and it actually talks you through each of the components that are part of the book, and then you can go and look at them itself. You've got this webinar to come back and reference as well. So the toolkit, as I mentioned before, that's that first thing that you'll see as part of each both units 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And this focuses on those key science skills that students will need to know, the biology as well, what it is. So you can see them all referenced here. We go into each of the topics. You'll see the spreads in there as well that reference those. So this is, as I said, a great way to start off your biology year, wherever that starts in the calendar. But it's a great reference tool for you and your students to come back to at any time as well. Okay. So we go into the chapters. As you saw before, we've got that, again, quick summary of what's going to be taught and learnt in this particular chapter, the key knowledge referencing the study design, those groundwork questions. So if we click on those, it will open up ground skill worksheets that our students can work on if they don't have that prerequisite knowledge. Any practicals that are referenced here, which are found at the back of the text. So if I go over to the contents page, you'll see all the practical work referenced on the left-hand side here. And I can go to those topics wherever they're referenced inside of the chapters. I can navigate by using just the arrow buttons down the bottom of the page. And there's a few other tools that I'll show you when we're in here. if I close off the contents page, I can always go back to it by clicking book content and closing it off. I can zoom in and out on the text using the zoom button. I can access any resources that are part of this particular spread by clicking on the resources tab at the bottom of the page. It'll only have resources here that are relevant to this particular topic and or chapter. So there's nothing in here that I won't need, and it's one way of accessing. I can also go into the resources tab I showed you earlier, and we will do that to go and filter and find resources that way as well. In here, I can do a few things. I can access the resources, of course. So you can see you've got teacher notes for every single one of the chapters and also the topics. So it's very explicit to assist you. And this is, again, all the feedback we've garnered from teachers is about making your life as a teacher easier and relevancy to your students in their learning as well. So having teacher notes here just, again, pulls back more of that time that you don't have as a teacher. We know you're time poor, to make your life easier, to jump off from here and then to be able to then not have to go and find a million things to plan, to organise, to teach a particular topic. You've got it all here for you already, and then you can focus on what's more important, and that is your teaching and your students' individual learning. So teacher notes, all the student book answers and questions are here, so you can get those in a print version as well. The topic quiz, which I'll show you in just a minute, is that digital version of the topic of the quiz that's found in the student book, and that feeds back digitally. And I'll show you again where the new reporting component and how you can utilize that. Any videos that are referenced here, risk assessments are all found in here. Any lab tech notes, again, developed by a professional lab technician. The Quizlet is a great new resource. So this is an outside resource to Oxford Digital, but we open it up, you'll see that it is relevant to that exact topic and that you're focusing on in the student book at that time. So these are great resource because you've got things like flashcards, you've got Learn, you've got the test in here, little interactive match play as well. Your students can come in here, and it's a great engaging resource to practice and learn all the key skills and that key knowledge that your students need to know. So it's another resource that you can access. And again, as a teacher, you don't have to develop this, it's already there. So it's relevant. You click on a link and it takes you out to it. And if you log in and set up a trial, set up an account with Quizlet, you can see what your students are doing in here. They can see each other. You can have scoreboards in here as well. You can even play against your students with some of the games. So you'll find there's a lot of those Quizlet links found throughout the topics as well, and that's something new to the VCE Biology and also our Year 7 to 10 front list books as well. Any web links that are found will be referenced here as well. What I can do here is I can assign. So I might want to assign a particular topic quiz once we've gone through and done the teaching, the students learning. I click assign. After I've clicked on the resource that I do want to assign, I click the start date. I choose what end date I want. Let's make it the 11th. I then click apply. And then on my left, I choose the class or groups that I want to actually assign this to. I can select all students or just a few. Once I click apply, it then gives me a bit of a summary before I send it off. I can edit and change from here. I can also send an email notification if I want to include some more info. So please, finish this before you come to class next time or whatever it is. Once I confirm and send, it's done. Okay, and it will come up in our assigned work, and I'll show you where that is in just a minute. The other thing that I can do while I'm on the pages as well is I can make notes. So we get teachers again feeding back to us that they might have to copy and paste and develop things from our resources. So what the publishing team has done is to in here. All right. Allow you to highlight different words. paragraphs, whatever it is that you want. And when you do highlight something, you've got a couple of options here. You can choose a color, and you can also look at the dictionary, which is referenced here. It'll give you definitions, so that's always very useful, especially with the sciences. But we can assign these as notes for our students to read. So we can click a color, as I said, the circles there. I can add notes, and it might be something I want my students to read, a bit of flipped classroom prior to coming to class. It might be something that I'm seeing in their assessment that I need them to brush up on. Whatever it is, I can use this instead of having to copy and paste something or find a link. I just highlight what I want them to read. I add a note, save, and it's there. And it's always here for me, so I can come into it. I can edit it at any time as well. I can then click on it and I can share it with my students just as I did before with the assign work. So once I assign this, next time my students log into their student dashboard, they'll be able to access and see what I've sent to them as well. So some nice little tools here for teachers to access that are quick on the spot, that don't take up a lot of your time and are relevant to what you're teaching and what your students need to know. Okay, so if we get to that chapter review at the end, as I mentioned before, we've got the summary here. So it breaks it down according to the topics as well, as you can see. You've got the revision questions relevant to this particular chapter. So not only have you had the topics, which we mentioned before, the topic quizzes. When our students do these topic quizzes, they open them up digitally. It looks like this. They click on the start. The first time that they do it, it will give them results, as you can see here, a percentage. It'll tell them with green how many they got correct and red how many incorrect. It automatically answers these questions for you, so it corrects them, so you don't have to, as a teacher, do anything, and it gives your students feedback straight away. They can then go in and do the topic quizzes again as many times as they like, but what it will feed back is that first result into your teacher dashboard as well. All students need to do is click start, and once they do that, it opens up that topic quiz digitally, and it's got different ways they can answer the questions. Be multiple choice, might be interactive, moving around. So yeah, click start, answer the questions, and once they've finished, they click submit, and as I said, it gives them instant feedback about where they've gone right and where they've gone wrong, what percentage they've got right, and that feeds back into your dashboard as well. So that's in addition to these revision questions, which is the same thing. You'll have access to these in the digital version as well. But you can also use, if you want students writing answers, the different worksheets that you can access as well. So the chapter 2 review questions, you can print those off if you want, or you can do them digitally. Okay, those exam essentials, as we mentioned earlier, are all referenced at the end of each of the chapters as well. So it's relevant, contextual about what they've just been learning, what is annotated answers of what's good and what's not, for them to work through, for you as a teacher to discuss with them as well. And then that think like an examiner component as well, if they want to access that, or if you want them to access it. Here's an answer that's not very good. Using the marking guide, rewrite it. How could you make it better as well? Before I mentioned about the little icons, so these are all referenced throughout the book as well. You see them in the hard copy, but also here. And these little links will take you out, whether it's a web link, a video tutorial, whatever it is, the resource. It's again another way of accessing those, along with that resource tab at the bottom of the page as well. All right, so those chapters and the way they're structured are all the same. So you'll see the way they work out. Got that summary at the beginning. We've got the groundwork questions, reference to the key knowledge that you'll learn throughout this particular chapter, any practicals that are referenced here, groundwork skill worksheets that you can get if you need to brush up on that prerequisite knowledge. And then when we get to the end of the chapter, we have that review. We've got the exam resources as well. And that's the way, as I mentioned, all of these chapters are structured. I mentioned before about practice exam questions. So these you'll find for units 3 and 4. And units 3 and 4 will have their own as well. Any of the practical work, as we mentioned, that are referenced at the beginning of each of the chapters, these, to not take up that space and to ruin that flow throughout the chapter, are all found at the back here for you and your students to access. That glossary, adding to what's found in the margins and what are bolded, and those different task words that are found throughout the book are also found at the back in this glossary as well. So anytime I want to get out of the book, I just go to the home page. The good thing too is next time I open the book, it'll just take me to where I finished as well. Everything that opens up in the book opens up in a tab inside the reader as well. It doesn't take you to another tab in your browser. All right, so let's have a look at this resources tab. So when I click on this, every single resource that's available inside the Oxford Digital for VCE Biology is found here. So I can click this little toggle here and it'll only show teacher resources, or I can take it off and we can see, you've got your risk assessment template here, how to graph in Excel. The VCE Biology Study Design is found here, past examinations and examination reports as well. So if you to tap into however you'd like, I can just scroll down the page, and for each of the chapters, it will have any of the resources that are aligned with those. So you can see, again, see the teacher notes that are referenced here, and then they're broken down into the topics as well. If I want to go to the topic, I can just click on it. It will take me to those pages in the e-reader. So it's another nice way of navigating as well. I can assign from here by clicking Assign Resources. I just go to where the boxes are. Okay, I want my students to answer this, so click Assign, as we did before. Start date, end date. Once we do all that, we click the Assign button, and it will send it to our students' dashboard and via email notification if we've ticked that as well. We've got filter options on the left here for all the resources. So I might not want to look for everything, but I want to find all the Quizlets. So I use the filter and I can then access those and find the one that I'm looking for and do what I want with it from there. You can see the number of resources that are referenced here. So you've got interactive assessments, explainer videos, prac support, prac videos, the risk assessments, a SAC guide, the student book answers and questions that are found in the student book, those teacher notes we talked about, any web links and worked example videos as well. So there's a vast array of resources here that will help to supplement your teaching and to complement what's found in the teacher book and in the student book as well. So when we go to assigned work, we can just pick a class and it will then highlight any of the work that we have assigned. It tells me a few things from here as well, who has and who hasn't completed this particular task that I've set. It'll show me the start and finish dates that I've set as well. I can delete these at any time. I click on the drop down. It'll show me what the resource is, and I click on that, it'll take me to it as well. So again, it's a nice little synopsis of what I have assigned, and for any teacher to then keep track of what they've assigned as well, who has and who hasn't completed it, and you can get onto those students that need a bit of a hurry up as well. And when they have completed it, you can go in and actually see, well, how they've gone as well. So for the reporting, this is another new tool that's been developed as part of the new Workbook Plus. I really like this. I think it's so relevant and teacher friendly that it won't just sit here as a nice add-on. It's there for teachers to utilize. So again, I can filter and find by class. So that's, sorry, I'm just going to go into another tab where I've got some data. So this is, again, I find my class, so I find the demo Workbook Pro class, And then you'll see all of my students referenced here. And then I can see how they've gone in the testing. It won't show me a percentage of their overall or their post-testing until they've completed all of the topic review questions as they progress through. So I can see that by clicking into the chapter, and then it breaks it down even further. So this is an assessment report on what those Check Your Learning quizzes that my students have done, as we showed before, completing these quizzes, the feedback from their student dashboard with their answers into my teacher dashboard. So I can see then exactly what my students have done. I've got a few other little tabs over on the left here that I can use. I can find out, well, who's above level, who's on level, who's below. So again, although this is summative assessment that's been completed at the end of a topic and or chapter, I can use it as formative assessment too, to say, well, gee, who's tracking well and who isn't? And then I can go in, I can click on here. I can see what the what's gone on with my students' answer and have a look at their thinking. I can open it up with them and we can talk through it, and which is a great teacher resource. And it's going to, again, cut down on your teaching time, but also allow you to come back to this and use it as an application as part of your teaching in getting your students where they need to be. I can choose individual students as well, so I don't have to let them see all of their results. And that's one other thing I can do is I can add, if I'm doing my own SACs and I want to add the what my students' results are in here as well, I can just click on this Add New Assessment button. I can write in what it is. I can decide then what the title is, what I want to show it as a display, how I want to grade it, any notes I want to reference in there as well. So these will be part of that. And then when it comes to that time, if I need to share this with someone or if I want access to it myself, I can just click on the download CSV and it'll open up as a spreadsheet for me to access as well. So that's one component of the reporting. The other one we have is the curriculum reporting, which I think is great as well. It can sometimes be tricky or to see where students are at in relation to whether it's curriculum 7 to 10 or the study design as well. So what this report does is it looks at all of those topic and chapter quizzes that the students are doing that are feeding back into this dashboard to see where students are at in relation to what the study design, key knowledge and key skills is asking them to do and to know. So I can see straight away with the answers, I can see with the green light, red light, how many correct answers they've got, what percentages they're working on as well. So again, another great form of summative assessment, but also that formative for me as a teacher to use to see what I need to do to help my students as well. So it breaks it down. You can see this is for Unit 4, how it's species related over time, and then we can break it down even further with those strands and substrands. So it gives us those content descriptors that we're finding in the study design and where students sit in relation to that. So this is great as a teacher. You can then go and have a look. You can see, you know, what the overall mark might be for, you know, for example, Pro Demo 7 student is getting 50%, but they're doing really well in this component of the curriculum, but they need to brush up on other areas. So I can really utilize this to find out what my students do and don't know, how they're tracking towards that study design that I'm going to use in reporting against as well, and use that as part of with the assessment report to get a really good overall picture of where my students sit, what they do and don't know, and then it informs my teaching greatly. So that is the Oxford Digital. Before I pass it back to John, I'll just briefly talk about some of the, well, just a summary of why the new VCE biology has been made the way that it is, and to, again, draw on that teacher feedback to produce this product, which will hopefully make your life easier as a teacher engage the students and help them with their learning. So what are the benefits of using Oxford VCE Biology? Hopefully we've shown you this today, that it's streamlined. As John mentioned earlier, there's nothing in the Oxford VCE Biology books that's not supposed to be there. So it's very streamlined. It has complete study design coverage, so that's great. But there's no unnecessary content in here. We haven't just chucked things in to hope and think that you might need it. And if there is something relevant that we can think that's useful, we can just use it in, put it into the digital O-book now as a web link or something like that you can go and access when and where you need. It's an engaging visual design. So this is, I know we don't judge a book by its cover, but we do. And again, we didn't want a wall of text for students. We incorporated, lively design, lively artwork, photographic artwork as well, and broken it down into a manageable and accessible for students as well. So they've got enough going on when they're learning and doing their VCE biology without having to go and manage and work through a book that is tricky as well. So those manageable chunks, break it down. You and your students can keep track of it as you're progressing through, making sure that they are knowing everything that they need to before they're progressing on as well. Lots of support for numerous opportunities to practice both their exams and their SACs. So there's practice SACs inside the student book as well, but lots of access to practice exam questions, and that's from year 11 in the units 1 and 2. So your students, if they're using this in year 11 and 12, can get, by the time they get to year 12 and they're doing exams, will have copious amounts of practice just by using the student book. And then if they add the student workbook into that as well, even more so. Everything with the practice work support resources. So we know people, students, teachers, schools don't always have access to labs, that there's low-tech practice that you can do, that there's videos that you can access, and that's a good thing too. If students are away, and they miss a prac, they can go back to that as well. You can assign this stuff, but you've got lots of sample data, the risk assessments, the tech notes, the answers all found in here as well. Again, to make your life as a teacher easier, to then focus on what's important, and that's your teaching with your students. And then hopefully what we've shown you with the new O-Book Pro helps to support and enhance your teaching and your students' learning. So everything that's found there, all of the resources to make your life as a time poor teacher less time poor and more relevant in utilising that time as well. So I'll hand you back to John now. So thank you again for your time.
Thanks very much, Paul. Great presentation. So just running through the pricing, student book and O-Book Pro, that's the print and digital, is $64.95. The student O-Book Pro, i.e. digital only, is $44.95. The workbook is $29.95, and the O-Book Pro, the Teacher O-Book Pro, is $299.95. And of course, if you book list biology for VCE, then that is provided complimentary. The Student O-Book Pro digital license period is for 1 year, and then there's a reactivation fee that applies for second-hand purchases. This is the Victorian secondary sales team. Alicia Giaquita, who's looks after broadly the south. Caitlin Hansford looks after the west. David Griffiths, the south and part of the east, and Paul, who you will be familiar with, the north and the other part of the east, if you like. My name's John Purnell. I'm State Sales Manager. So what's next? PD certificates. You'll be sent an email containing a link to request your PD certificate. Free digital trial and complimentary resource. So the team will be in touch to record your choice of complimentary resource, but also the digital trial, of what timing we can arrange that for. So lastly, thank you very much for attending. Thanks for your time today. Appreciate you've got a busy schedule, and we hope you found it valuable.